Let's bring in Lieutenant Colonel Daniel Davis. Now, good to have you with us. I want to start with some of the tensions we saw brewing between Ukraine and Western allies at yesterday's NATO meeting. We heard separately from Britain's defense secretary and the White House National Security Advisor, Jake Sullivan, that Ukraine ought to show more gratitude for the support it's getting. That appeared to be in response to the anger we saw expressed by President Zelensky over the lack of a timetable to join NATO. What do you make of those comments? Were you surprised they were made publicly?
Yeah, I got to say I was a little bit surprised that they were made publicly because behind the scenes in about the 5 to 6 days prior to this conference, many people at the highest levels in NATO were working with Zelensky and his administration to say, look, we're going to give you a lot of things. We're going to give you more weapons and ammunition, but there's not going to be a firm deadline given to you for an application to NATO. So don't come in and make a big issue because we're trying to show unity and we want togetherness. And it looks like that Zelensky tried to play that at the last minute to try to change the term by trying to play on some of his star power that he's been having by making these claims that he wants a firm deadline and a firm date. And NATO is just not going to give in on that. And rightly so, because, look, there's no way that a country that is at war with a nuclear power is going to be given entry into a NATO with Article 5 guarantees. And he should have known that. And I don't think it was a good play for Zelensky. And I think he was a bit humbled by it, it looks like.
We know Russia, of course, sees NATO's eastward expansion as an existential threat. I mean, do you think Ukraine should be admitted to NATO after the war is over? Is there any risk to global stability even doing it then?
The United States has to be very clear-eyed on this. We need to do everything in our power to keep our current alliance system safe and our country safe. The fact is that American interests are not synonymous with Kiev's interests. And, of course, they want in, and it makes perfect sense that they want NATO. But our security would be put at more risk because of the Article 5 guarantees to a country that is very much antagonistic with its neighbor. So I don't think that whether this war is over now or later, or that the NATO entrance is going to be granted to Ukraine, because number one, they're not even going to qualify by our own standards of having all their internal disputes resolved. They've been at civil war since 2014, and their border disputes resolved. So unless there's a complete peace between the two, then maybe you can talk about it. But that is so far in the future that it's just not rational in the near term.
As we've been talking about all morning, President Biden is in Finland for the Nordic summit. What kind of role do you see that country playing as the newest NATO member, and also Sweden as an incoming member?
Yeah, militarily, they're not that big of a power. They have some capability, but in terms of the overall NATO military power, it doesn't really add a lot to it. But it does add a lot of political stability, and it expands the unity, within Europe towards NATO. So in that regard, it does strengthen the alliance diplomatically and politically, but it doesn't do a lot militarily. And Biden's trying to do things to continue to advance American interests, especially in the Arctic and with some AI and some other issues that are of mutual benefit up there.
All right. Lieutenant Colonel Davis, as always, thanks for your expertise. We appreciate it.